What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Process Sports Radio. I am your host, Justin. As you guys all know, I'm super excited to have you guys here. It's finally here, our last review of The Last Dance. As you guys know, last night, episode 9 and 8 of The Last Dance did drop, and man, what a bunch of two great episodes they were. But on the other side of it, I'm pretty upset because, what am I supposed to watch now on Sunday night, sports-wise, right? Yes, the Bundesliga is back. Yes, it looks like the other sports are coming back. Yes, there's UFC, but still, it's not fully back. You know what I'm saying? But we have other sports to talk about, which is really exciting. But nothing in North America yet. But it does look like everything is opening up again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everybody's staying safe and this pandemic is nearing the end. But we still have to do the hard work and still maintain social distance and still make sure we're taking care of everybody else to get back to where we were before. But going back to The Last Dance, it's over. It's done with. I have so many things to say with the last two episodes and kind of tie a bow around the end of it. So that's kind of what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go over the last two episodes and then talk about some of my winners and losers of the documentary. Of course, we as fans were all winners because we finally got to witness something sports-wise, and it was amazing to see, and it was great. And I love doing the reviews on it, so I'm really excited to go through that. But definitely, let's just dive right in. But before we dive in, I want to make sure, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Remember, 2 videos a week. I'm going to stay to that. Keep on posting stuff. Hit the like and subscribe button. Follow me on Instagram at Process Sports, on Twitter at _Process Sports, Facebook, whatever you guys do. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever you use. We're all on there. You know that. So thank you again for all the support. Like I said, I really do appreciate it all. And let's just get started and have a great episode today. So where we left off was the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals between Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls and Reggie Miller's Indiana Pacers, right? And that was a 7-game slugfest. What people forget to remember is that those Pacers teams were actually really good, and they had a really great Hall of Fame leader in Reggie Miller, who is the second best shooter, in my opinion, right behind Steph Curry. Not Ray Allen's Reggie Miller. And the reason I think is Reggie Miller was so much more of a better player than Ray Allen. Reggie Miller led those Pacer teams who not only gave the Bulls all they could give, they gave the Knicks fits, they gave even the Lakers. They played the Lakers in the finals, right? The Pacers had a really good team. They were coached by Larry Bird. They were coached by Larry Brown before that. They had Jalen Rose, Mark Jackson, who used to be the coach of the Warriors, who was a great veteran point guard. They had a really good squad, those Pacers teams. And Reggie was such a pest out there. He was a complete agitator out there. He would piss people off, trash talk. He pissed off Spike Lee so much that Spike Lee was considered one of the most hated men in New York when the Pacers and the Knicks had those crazy battles, right? Reggie, he was not only a great shooter, but a great player, a great leader. He led those teams, and it's unfortunate that he ran into MJ and the Bulls, or the Knicks at that time, that they were not really able to get over the hump and win a title. They did make it to the finals. They lost to Phil Jackson, Shaq, and Kobe when they first started their first three-peat. But definitely, Reggie was such a clutch player. You saw that clutch shot he hit, I believe, in that series where he won the game. He was dancing around. Was it a push-off? Was it not? He did push off, but, at that point in time, you knew they were going to call the foul there. So Reggie did what Reggie did. He got the ball, made the shot, and it went in, right? So Reggie was definitely a clutch player we saw. But, like I said, they ran into the Bulls with Jordan, Rodman, and Pippen. And like always, Jordan would not allow them to lose, and they came through and they won that game in 7 games. And Jordan even said that outside of the Pistons, those Pacers teams gave him the most amount of trouble, which is such a big statement by Jordan to make, because think about all the great teams he played, right? But for the fact that those Pacers teams were next to the Pistons and that gave him the most difficulty is truly a testament to how great those Pacers teams were and how great Reggie Miller was. So Reggie Miller, I'm giving you your flowers right now. I'm definitely giving you respect and props. And for anybody that doesn't know Reggie Miller, watch the 30 for 30 winning time by Reggie Miller. It was the Pacers against the Knicks, like I mentioned. It's unbelievable. 30 for 30 gives you such a great in-depth analysis of how Reggie Miller's mind worked and how much he, just like Jordan, loved to win, loved competition, and would not stop at all costs. So once the Bulls kind of got past the Pacers, were then brought into another great team of that era, right? And one thing I did learn about this whole documentary was, you think about how many great teams that were in the 90s that Jordan stopped or dethroned, right? For example, so of course we know that he dethroned the bad boy Pistons and ended that dynasty. Then you could kind of say the Showtime Lakers were kind of done, but they did make it to the finals and Jordan did beat them. And then subsequently they did break apart the Showtime Lakers and they rebuilt. You think with the Blazers with Clyde Drexler and stuff like that. The Blazers, they were a top team in the Western Conference in the early 90s there. Like, they won 60 plus games. They were a top seed quite frequently. They were a very good team, and they were led by Clyde Drexler, who was a top 10 player in the league at that time. He never won a title. Sorry, never won a title in Portland, but won a title in Houston, right? Then you think with the Suns with Barkley. Charles Barkley never won a title because Michael Jordan stopped him, right? Then you go to the Sonics with Payton and Kemp. They won 63 games that year or something like that. A crazy amount of games. And they lost to the Bulls when the Bulls won 72-10. Then you think about, again, we're going to the Jazz now. Stockton, Malone. Stockton was an elite point guard at that time. Great steal, great passers, could shoot clutch shots. You had Karl Malone, the mailman, right? The pick and roll he ran with Stockton. The Karl Malone, I think, is like second in all-time points right now because of that pick and roll and the way that system worked in Utah. And they were an explosive offensive team. But with that being said, they ran into the Bulls, who had Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan would not allow them to lose. It was funny. He said what really drove him in that 97 finals was the fact, just like in 93, that they gave the MVP to Karl Malone, not him. Just like in 93 when they gave it to Charles Barkley when he thought he was the MVP. And it was crazy to see how MJ did this whole document talked about his list, who he wanted to go after, right? So it was Karl Malone, but it was also Brian Russell. So Brian Russell was, he's like a good role player on the Jazz and stuff like that. But the story goes, MJ was coming back from baseball. He was at the facility in Chicago, and Brian Russell just said, "Why'd you quit? Why would you quit? I could still guard you." And MJ kind of was crazed by it. And when you piss off MJ, what happens? He's going to go out there and kill you. So he put Brian Russell on his list and proceeded to give him the business for 2 straight finals, and it was not fun for them. But that Jazz team definitely, they were a very good team, but they ran into Jordan. And it was crazy to see that one game where I think it was in the 98 finals where they held the Jazz to 54 points. Could you think about it like that? Put that in perspective into today's league. 54 points is now what teams get on halftime on average, maybe more, right? So to hold a team to 54 points the whole game is unbelievable, and it's something that we'll never ever see again. We'll never see a team score 54 points, especially in an NBA Finals game ever again. Then, going back to the 97 series, we learn about the flu game, which really wasn't the flu game. It was the food poisoning game. And if you guys watched my conspiracy theory video I posted a little while ago, I even said that it was not a flu game. It was a food poisoning game. And we finally got the validation of it. So I did call it. So for all you guys out there, I did call it. But it goes like, so Jordan was hungry. He orders a pizza in Utah. And Tim Grover, his iconic trainer, goes down, gets the pizza. There's 4 guys delivering a pizza. And I don't know about you guys, but it's generally just, when you order a pizza, it's just one guy that delivers the pizza. So 4 guys delivered. He's got it. And Tim Grover says, I have a bad feeling about it, but he leaves the pizza. MJ eats it all and then proceeds to puke and be curled up in a fetal position and is dying. But he still balls out and wins the game, the iconic flu game, or the food poisoning game, we should call it now. But yeah, so the Jazz lose that series in 6 games because of Steve Kerr. So we finally get to talk about Steve Kerr. Yes, the Steve Kerr who is the Warriors head coach now, played on those Bulls teams for that last 3-peat. And honestly, I knew Steve Kerr was like really an in-depth person, had a really depth personality. If you ever follow him on Twitter, he would say he's very good, very opinionated on politics and stuff like that, especially in the States. His dad was actually a professor at a university in Lebanon and was assassinated. So him and MJ really they never really talked about it, but you could sense there's that connection there about both losing their fathers to horrific accidents. And really seeing where Steve Kerr's family was and stuff like that was really eye-opening to me because you can kind of see where he came from, all of his opinions came from. His mom's a professor at UCLA, I believe, and he's actually he's a fierce competitor. And I believe last week we did see that when MJ punched him in the face and Steve Kerr fought back, he kind of gained MJ's respect. Well, that respect came in big in '97 in the Game 6 of the Finals where they double-teamed Mike, and Mike passed the ball to Steve Kerr, and Steve Kerr hit the game-winning shot pretty much. And basically that's where, Michael Jordan trusted Steve Kerr to take that shot and be ready. You saw it on the clips on the bench. Basically, he told Steve to be ready, and Steve Kerr said, I'll be ready. He made the shot. The Bulls win their 5th title, and they go on, and they win the next one, as we do know. But it was definitely great to see Steve Kerr get a little bit of a shine, and definitely he did portray as a winner in this documentary, in my opinion. because you definitely got to see the fact that, he was an integral part of that team as well. So another thing about that I kind of caught on about this was eras, right? So you look at the era that Jordan played in to the era of the NBA now, right? So it's clear that was a much more physical time in the league at that point in time, right? They had the hand checks, you had hard fouls, hard screens, right? There was much more condensed. Like, you needed a center, you needed a big man to play in between, or you needed a mid-range jumper. Where now it's 3-point, it's all open out, and it's all stretched out, right? So it was definitely. Now, I'm not saying that. Trust me, I love the NBA now. The offensive play, the 3-point shots, the fast pace like that. It's unbelievable, right? The way I kind of relate it to is, if you think with the NHL, right? Think about it now. The players in the NHL are way faster, way more skilled, way more, they have way better, more athletic skill. They're much more trained well. Where in the 80s, back when Gretzky was there and stuff like that, the guys were racking up 170 points. Gretzky was getting 200, scoring like 90 goals in a season, right? Because why? The goalies weren't as good. The game was a much more different game then, right? It's just like that. It's kind of hard to compare because they're two different games, right? The rules have changed. The rules have expanded. That was a much more physical, grueling grind. I'm not saying that these guys do not physically, it doesn't tax these guys physically, but it's much more physical back then. It was way more hand checking, like I said. You had to fight through stuff harder. You didn't get as many fouls, right? Where now there's more catered to the offensive stars, right? Where back then it wasn't. So to see what Jordan was able to do in such a physical league and build like that and go through stuff and kind of hit those brick walls with Detroit, kind of hit that brick wall where, whether he was going to get suspended or not, but had to go through that, right? Fight through all that stuff, right? You see that sometimes in the NBA now, but you don't see that consistent fight and process, I feel, now, where guys are hitting the wall, have to really assess and change their games, right? I think like guys like Kobe had to change his game, LeBron had to change his game, right? But for a lot of players, they don't change who they are, and it's kind of hard. You can't really change it, but you got to, I feel that as this documentary went on, you saw the evolution of Michael Jordan, right? And I'm going to touch on that in a bit, but you really got to see him go from an athletic specimen to a cerebral assassin with his mind, right? And that is something that truly defines greatness, in my opinion. But going back to some of the winners of this documentary, definitely Steve Kerr's a winner. I definitely think Phil Jackson is a winner as well. Phil Jackson, you really got to see how Phil Jackson was not so much a great X's and O's coach as we touched about before when I talked with Surgeon, but he was great with the way he could control egos and manage egos and bring a whole team together on a central image, right? Like The Last Dance. Like, he came up with that idea of The Last Dance, the last season, and really motivated the team. It kind of put the team in an us against them mode where it was the players and Phil Jackson versus Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause. And that kind of he was able to create these rifts and these egos to maximize the players and piss them off and maximize their amount of effort, which is unbelievable. He did it with the Lakers too, with Shaq and Kobe. I don't care what you say. He let Shaq and Kobe go at it because he knew it pissed them off, and I knew that it would help them win. Now, it didn't eventually. They had an ugly divorce, right? But for that peak run, he let them go at it, and they maximized 3P. They got 3 titles, right? So definitely Phil Jackson is a winner. The way he controlled my next winner, I'd say he's probably the biggest star next to Michael Jordan in this documentary. The way Phil Jackson just let Dennis Rodman run loose definitely helped him, because they knew how integral Dennis Rodman was in this for that team, being that rebounder, that defensive force he was. He let Dennis Rodman do what he wanted because he knew Dennis Rodman could be held accountable and was going to do his job. So speaking on Dennis Rodman, why he's a winner. First of all, he left the NBA Finals in between games and skipped practice to join the NWO, right? To smash Diamond Dallas Page in the back with a steel chair. And he still had Carmen Electra. Dennis Rodman, for me, was such a character and really personified what a way. People think he's crazy. Hell, I think he's crazy. But I also love it because he was himself. He was expressed himself. And you know what? He's something that sports needed, and sports probably needs more wild characters like that. But Dennis Rodman, not only was he such a wild character, he was also very smart man too, right? Not on you think about on the court, you saw how he would train to see where the ball bounced off the rim and catch it, how he would play defense, how he would know how to piss another player off, how he would, as Gary Payton said, fuck everything up, right? Dennis Rodman was more than just a crazy character. Dennis Rodman was a great player. But he was also a smart businessman too. I was reading a tweet when he joined NWO, WCW paid him $250,000 and let him have the private jet to fly from Detroit, where the WCW was filmed, and then fly back to Chicago. And the Bulls only fined him $20K. So he came out with profit. And I think I saw Ron Harper tweet out saying that's why he's such a smart businessman, right? So definitely I think Dennis Rodman was a huge winner in this documentary. You really got to see the mind of Dennis Rodman, not only with the Bulls, but also with the Bad Boys, and his development over, and how he evolved from being like that quiet guy to that loud character that hangs out in North Korea now that we all know. But definitely Dennis Rodman came out as a winner in this documentary. A loser in this documentary definitely would be, I don't really know if you could classify Jerry Krause as a loser. Now, he's definitely portrayed as a villain, the guy that kind of, split the team up and kind of was the cause of the breakup. But at the end of the last episode, we got to know that it was kind of Jerry Reinsdorf who was really, end of the dynasty, because, he said that, it wouldn't make economical sense. What does it come back to? As I always say, money. He felt that it didn't make the money sense. He was basically being cheap. He was being cheap. And he let that dynasty die. Now, he did offer Phil Jackson to come back, but Phil Jackson said no. He needed a break because it wasn't fair to Jerry Krause, because as we saw in the first episode, Jerry Krause said it doesn't matter if you go 82-0 and win the title, you're not coming back. So I think for everybody that said, I wish they came back, I wish they stayed, the Bulls, I wish they went for the seventh title. I think, you know what? It's perfect that they ended where it was, right? You can always, because it left a what if question. What if they stayed? What if? And I feel that truly defines greatness, right? What if? So what if Bo Jackson had stayed healthy? What if the Bulls had won for a 7-3-P? What happens if Kevin Durant stayed? Would they have won again, right? I really love that what if, because we always wonder what if. It enhances the legacy, in my opinion, on why things are great. So this Bulls team, their lore and stuff like that, what if they stayed? Would they have won the seventh title? There was a lockout that year. Would they really have won? Would Pippen really want to come back and play for the Bulls? Would MJ? I know we all know MJ would have came back to play, but what about Rodman? He was getting older and stuff like that. He was, becoming more and more of a free spirit, as we like to say. He had a wrestling career to focus on too. So it's the what if question is always great like that, and I'm glad that was right where it ended. Now, of course, Jordan went on to the Wizards and it didn't go so well, but for that Bulls era, that was perfect where it ended. 6 titles in 8 years. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. Their legacy is pretty much cemented as probably the greatest, most iconic team of any sport, I would say, in professional sports at all. Like now, even bigger than the Patriots, the Yankees, right? That 8-year run with the Bulls, I mean, they were rock stars. They were the biggest thing in the world, bigger than any rock band, bigger than any celebrity, right? Michael Jordan was the biggest celebrity in the world during that time, right? And that's a true testament. For me, never growing up in the Jordan era, right? Like I'm come from, Kobe, LeBron. Like I said, I've always been a LeBron guy. LeBron's my guy. But I don't think I really understood how big Jordan was until I watched this documentary. Like I always knew Jordan was a big, iconic athlete, but I never really understood and put into perspective of, man, like this guy is like everywhere, and everybody in the world wants to be like Mike. Everybody wants a piece of Michael Jordan, right? He was the biggest athlete in the world. Any sport, biggest celebrity in the world, any actor, musician, whatever. Michael Jordan was the biggest thing in the world. And that made the Bulls the biggest in the world. And for me, that was crazy to see. Like not only just the shoes, but the way he played. Everybody thought was his iconic movement, the way he floated through air. Right, it was amazing to see how people just loved Jordan like that. It was unbelievable. But it's definitely it was definitely the perfect point where they ended off that Bulls dynasty. And it's right. Everybody went on their own way. Right. For me, more so than Krause and going back to the losers, more so than Krause and Reinsdorf, I think the biggest loser in this, who kind of got the baddest, who kind of took the biggest hit legacy-wise and perception-wise, would be Scottie Pippen, right? Of course, when we first started the documentary, we found out that Pip wanted to, enjoy his summer, didn't want to get a surgery and do it on company time, right? Which again portrayed him as not being really a team player. Being selfish. Then we saw, of course, in 94, where you notice they kind of glossed over the fact that Pippen was probably one of the best players in the league that year, probably the best player in the league that year. But they kind of highlighted on the fact that he, again, pouted and quit on the team and did not want to be on the floor when Tony Kukoc hit that game-winning shot against the Knicks. And that still haunts him to this day, right? Then, of course, we see him demanding a trade, doesn't want to play for the Bulls during that last year. Of course, due to contractual issues, but, that made him look bad. Then we see, the injuries, the migraines and stuff like that where Jordan, you could tell Jordan was still remembers that migraine game against Detroit and still kind of holds it against Scottie Pippen, right? Then the back kind of flares. The back thing I will give if you know anybody with back pain is just crippling, right? But definitely you could Pippen took a big hit in this because his ego, right? His selfishness, his really commitment to the team was really at question. So Pippen, in my opinion, he's still an all-time 50 grade player. He's still a iconic player, right? And the Bulls would have never won without Scottie Pippen. I mean, MJ even said himself, there's no Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen, right? So we know that Pippen was a great player and Pippen was integral for those Bulls titles, right? But his perception of being a selfish guy who quit on the team is definitely out there now, and it took a hit to his legacy, in my opinion. But with that being said, he's still a 6-time champion and a Hall of Famer. But from this documentary, his legacy definitely did take a hit, and I truly feel that public perception is going to be a bit negative on him for now. Let's go to the big elephant in the room, Michael Jordan. So that's kind of who this whole thing was about, Michael Jordan. So disclaimer, before this whole docu-series started, I thought Michael Jordan was the best player of all time. I had him, then LeBron, right? It's still that's still how I see it, but it did kind of space the gap out. For me, actually, you know what? It didn't really space the gap. It's still pretty even because you know why? Michael Jordan was proven to be human here, right? There's a lot of mistakes he made in the public that LeBron James has never made. LeBron James is probably the one athlete in society today that's never had a misstep publicly at all. He has been a perfect human being in the public, in society, as a leader, as an activist, as a role model. LeBron James is a better like that than Michael Jordan will ever be, right? But Michael Jordan have the most iconic sneakers, right? But the reason is this, that I think Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time because the way he just was determined to win and would win at all costs. Was Michael Jordan a dick to his teammates? Yes. Did he have a gambling problem? Yes. Was he not the best? Maybe made a lot of mistakes personally as well. Yes. All stuff LeBron James does not do. But Michael Jordan really, really wanted to win. And he wanted to be the best. And for that, and you could see how he just changed, and always whenever something came up, he always figured a way to come out on top. Whether that was against the bad boy Pistons and, getting stronger in the weight room, figuring out a way to beat those Jordan rules. Or was it, like I said earlier, his evolution, not going from just being an athletic guy to using his mind to manipulate where the game was going to go, where the ball was going to go, how to get a shot off, right? For me, the reason why athletes are so great, and I consider athletes great, is because of this. If an athlete loses a certain attribute that they had before, and they can figure out a way to maintain that level of greatness, but using it in a different way, it's unbelievable. You're seeing it right now with LeBron James. You saw it with Kobe Bryant. You saw it with Michael Jordan. These guys were athletic freaks when they first came in the league, but once their athleticism goes away, because your athleticism is not going to be there forever, the way they use their high basketball mind. Like I said, those three men right there, Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, have probably the highest basketball IQ in the whole world, in all of basketball, right? You're seeing it where they can use their mind and the strong fundamentals they have to get a shot off, to manipulate the game, to manipulate a teammate going here, to make a pass here, to use their mind to just dominate teams still is unbelievable, and it's a true testament to greatness. You look at a guy like Shaq. Shaq was a physical freak. Or you look at a guy like Giannis, right? Shaq and Giannis, right? Shaq was so great, so dominant because he was 7'2", 300 pounds, could bully guys on the block and just cram on you. But he couldn't step out and shoot. He couldn't really do much. Did he have really great post moves? Maybe, but it was off his physical force, and you didn't work on his body. He got fat, and that's what pissed Kobe off. And once Shaq lost his athleticism, you saw his game deteriorate. And eventually, at the end of his career, Shaq was really a non-factor, right? And some guy look at Giannis, right? You think about the whole beef with James Harden and Giannis. James Harden said, because basically you said, Giannis is great because of his size and his athleticism, where James Harden might not be the most athletic guy, but he's great on ball handling skills, can shoot the ball, can pass, right? Stuff like that. For me, if Giannis ever loses his athleticism, it could be over for him unless he builds a skill, right? That's what the sign of a truly great athlete is. If you lose your athleticism and you lose what made you great early on, but you figure out a way and change your game and make those adjustments to still maintain greatness, is unbelievable, right? So for me, that's what makes Jordan unbelievable, right? Jordan dominated the game like nobody else did. His prime, Michael Jordan's prime, was probably the greatest we've ever seen. If you put Michael Jordan from that 8-year period, right? It's unbelievable, man. Like from what I witnessed, right? I truly thought Michael Jordan was a great player before, but for me, I did not understand how iconic he was and how people revered him so much. And I always got into debates with people before, but okay, why do you think Jordan's so good? Like whether that's older family members or other people, why is Jordan so great? Like, why do you guys love him so much? Like, LeBron's great as well, but the reason they said is because you never witnessed what it was like to be like Mike in his time. And for us, just getting a snippet of that was definitely amazing. The way Michael Jordan controlled that whole era, and he really had a process of going through and evolving and getting better and finding different tunes and becoming Black Jesus or the Black Cat like that. It's definitely something that we'll never see again in sports, and I'm so glad that this documentary was there to highlight it. It's something that I will binge watch over and over again, and it's definitely something that's amazing. So definitely thank you, ESPN. Thank you, Michael Jordan, for all of this. It's great, and I can't wait to see what's next. Like I said, guys, appreciate the support. Please like this video. I got more and more coming, and we got some great interviews lined up, so take care, everybody, and stay safe.